Hi, I'm Shawn James, author of the ISIS series and the publisher of SJS Direct. I wanted to take a minute to talk to readers about the next book in the ISIS series. The ISIS series is action-packed African American fantasy fiction featuring the adventures of the goddess next door. You can get ISIS series books like ISIS Wrath of the Cyber Goddess and ISIS Wrath of the Cyber Goddess here, and the most recent ISIS series book, Night of the Vampires, available on Amazon.com in paperback. And you can also get these books on Kindle Unlimited, or if you have Amazon Prime, you can borrow them. But I really wanted to talk to you about the next book in the ISIS series because this one, well, most of the books in the ISIS series are action-packed fantasy adventures. This one is going to be a little different. The next book that I'm working on is called ISIS Imitation of Life. And this story is set in the year 1937, and it's inspired by the 1934 classic film Imitation of Life. And in this story, the character of Isis is at a crossroads in her life, and she has to decide whether she wants to stay and help African Americans in their continuing struggles in America, or if she decides, you know, is this is this a facade she's living in? Is she living an imitation of a life of an African American? This story is really heavily about race and identity, and it's one that I designed to be a thought-provoking story. One that really gets you really thinking about the issues of race and identity because I got inspired to write this story based on several comments I got about the new covers for ISIS Night of the Vampires and ISIS Wrath of the Cyber Goddess. Um, some people got a little offended because they thought that the characters on the cover were too light skinned. And I really wanted to deal with this light skin, dark skin issue once and for all in one story because I personally believe that what makes a person black is not their skin tone, but the content of their character. And when I look at the character on these covers, I don't see um, a person trying to be white, as some people have told me, or a person who is not black. I see a black woman, and I designed this character to be a black woman and to give African American girls the most positive heroine they could have. And what I'm trying to do with this new story, Imitation of Life, is deal with this issue of race and identity once and for all regarding the character of Isis because I really want people to understand that what makes a person black is, again, not their skin tone, but the content of the character. It's the actions of a person that show how much they care about black people, and that's what has an impact, not their skin tone. And I really do not like these skin tone debates because I feel that it divides us as a people and it prevents us from connecting to each other as human beings and, seeing the good in each other. The reason why I really want to do this story is because I really want people to start thinking about race and identity because I believe it's one of those things that's really dividing us and preventing us from really coming together as a people. And I really, it really aggravates me when people try to bring these straw man discussions such as light skin and dark skin into my work. And I really want to tackle it in a constructive manner instead of arguing with people about light skin and dark skin. I really wanted to make an artistic statement about it. Because to me, you know, people think of this whole light skin, dark skin thing, and it just really makes them emotional, and they don't think about, this is a black person too. This person who you call light skin is also dealing with racism and discrimination, and even worse, intra racism and intra discrimination from their own people. And this is something we really don't think about, and we really don't want to explore. And I really feel that interracial issues need to be explored. I've explored them before in other books, such as, The Temptation of John Haynes, where I discussed race and class in this book for a couple of chapters. And in the Thetas, I also discussed, race, class, and identity as well. But in ISIS Imitation of Life, I really wanted, to go into it in depth and talk about, how race and identity, had a major role in ISIS's life when she returned to America and what she had to do and how she dealt with it as a black person because the character of Isis sees herself as a black woman first and a goddess second, and that's what leads to her being at a crossroads, because she says to herself, am I really being a black person, or am I mocking black people by living and walking among them? Am I um, pretending to be a black person, or am I really a black person? Because when she first came to America, people accepted her. I mean, when she first came to America, people accepted her as a black person, and she adopted that identity as a black person, as a Negro at the time, and she comes and meets with these other people, and she sees that it runs into a different situation where people are trying to bring this light skin, dark skin issue into things, and she has to deal with this race and identity issue because um, she has to deal with this race and identity issue, and she's just pondering whether or not she should continue to stay on and continue to try to help African Americans deal with and help her stay on and help African Americans, deal with things like Jim Crow and the issues that people face at the time. This story, is going to be very different. I really wanted to do a story based in the era of comic books golden age, and what I learned is that, well, your Superman and your Batmans and many of these other superheroes were having, this grand old time in the golden age, this brightly colored period. African Americans, on the other hand, were going through one of the darkest periods in the history of America. And in the mid 1930s, lynchings were at an all time high. Jim Crow was in full effect, and people lived in pretty much fear down south. And it wasn't any better up in the north either, because a lot of people experienced, racism and discrimination in the job market, because the only jobs you could get at the time were Pullman porter and janitor and chauffeur, or you could just be a maid. That's if you didn't have your own businesses and your own, business infrastructure, or you could be, get something like a teacher job if you worked at a black school or something like that. But I really wanted to, talk about that period because it was a very dark period, and it's a very interesting contrast to the golden age of superheroes, which started in the mid to late 1930s and continued on to the 1940s. And I really wanted to talk about what defined a hero in that period for black people, especially black women, because we really don't want to talk about that type of what type of hero that is, because we didn't really get black superheroes until the 1960s. But what I wanted to do was a story talking about what made people heroes in America back then. And Isis is a heroine during this time. She's a college professor at Spelman University, and she's also, in this story, she's gone upstate to help out a pledge during her time at a sorority while she's pledging the sorority. It's very similar to the Thetas, and where the pledge is being helped to understand black culture and black history. And this is what she's doing. She's trying to help this pledge, understand black culture and black history and how to overcome the issues with Jim Crow and racism and discrimination. And it's not I use my superpowers to save people. It's more of a, people learning how to deal with life situations, because in Jim Crow, we didn't have, people fantasizing about superheroes and stuff like that. We had to deal with really, really, really hard issues. And this is a story that, it's about her overcoming her issues with intraracial issues, and trying to move her life forward. And I'm sorry, excuse me, and her trying to do what is best to help black people, because Isis was very dedicated to helping black people and very dedicated to helping black people move themselves forward. She wants to see the African American race be better, and take itself to the next level. And she looks at Jim Crow, and she's trying to find ways to overcome it, but she has to think about her own identity. Is she lying to herself by saying that she's black, and identifying with black culture and black issues? And is this the best thing for her to do? And this was a story, again, it means a lot to me because I get to explore a lot of really concepts that have meant a lot to me ever since I was a child, such as the golden age of comic books, the golden age of pulp fiction, which with characters like your Doc Savage, the Shadow, um, Green Hornet, all these great characters that came out during the pulp period of the mid to late 1930s before the comic book golden age. And I really am enjoying putting these elements together because I really wanted to make a real statement about the ISIS characters, racial identity, one, and two, a real statement about African Americans in the golden age of comics because we really don't get to hear us have a story told, like this one, where we really go into this golden age period and tell a tale from an African American perspective. And I'm gonna try to fit some fantasy elements in there, ISIS using their superpowers and stuff like that. But it's gonna be more of a human story, and it's gonna be more of a story about people coming to understand the definition of what black is, and that you know that black is more than just a skin color. It is the content of people's character, and it is the content, and it's the base of all their actions. That is what makes a person black, and that's something that I really want to convey in this story because I really don't want my work to be defined by just the color of a character on a book. In both of these stories, the content is very strong. It's very positive. It's very inspiring. The heroes are, really good heroes, and the stories are very entertaining. And I want people to judge the books based on the content inside them, not the color of the character's skin. And I've been doing a lot of research to make this story the best it can be. I just got through watching the 1934 version of Imitation of Life. I've been reading heavily on different stereotypical caricatures like your tragic mulatto, and I've been reading, about the history of the light skin, dark skin issue. I've been reading about the period of the 1930s and the 1940s, and I want this story to not only be educational but entertaining as well because I want people to come out of it, with a really strong understanding of what it is, what it meant to be black during this period, this dark period of Jim Crow and before the Civil Rights Movement, and how people still managed to live their lives and do what they need to do because a lot of us, we really don't understand, how history relates to our lives today. And I really want people to understand how it relates to our life today. This is not my first foray into doing a ISIS series. In the past. The first ISIS was set in the 1880s, and a recent story I did, which I call the ISIS Fantasy Flashback series, was called Death of the Theta. That story was set in 1973. This is the third story I've done in the timeline, and this one is set in 1937, and it takes place up north. And the reason why I make it take place up north is because I want people to understand that, everybody always talks about how the South was always the place where everybody had to deal with racism and Jim Crow. No, we had to deal with racism here in the North as well. And a lot of people, they don't believe that. They think, oh, because black people had jobs here or they had, a little bit of opportunity here that they were doing better. But still, people had to deal with unwritten rules because Jim Crow was not just a set of written rules, it was a set of unwritten rules regarding how blacks and whites interacted, and more so how blacks interacted with each other because um, that's a concept we really don't explore, how blacks, you know, how we interacted with each other and how we created our social rules and the culture that was taught to us because a lot of what we see today is based on those unwritten social rules. And I really want people to understand, take a real look at their culture and their community. And that's one of the reasons why I'm writing this story because I just really want people to understand, different the whole social situation regarding African Americans and everything. I'm hoping to get this ISIS Imitation of Life out by about 2016 because it usually takes me about 6 to 8 months to get a project finished. Right now, I'm in the middle of about the fifth chapter. I'm still doing research. I'm still, ironing out details. I'm still ironing out the plot line. But this book does start right after the first couple of chapters start right after Isis Night of the Vampire. So I'm really urging you to go out and get this book. This book features a great cover by hero business artist Bill Walko, and this is a great book. I'm really urging you to go out and get it so you can get caught up on the Isis series. And the book before it, Isis Wrath of the Cyber Goddess, which features another great cover by hero business artist Bill Walko. Both of these books, again, are available on Amazon.com. Both of them are available in paperback, and they're also available on Kindle Unlimited. So if you want to have Amazon Prime, you can just go out and borrow them. But I'm urging you guys really to go out and get, when it comes out, Isis Imitation of Life, because this one is a great story. It's a story that's going to give you, perspective on African American history, African American culture, and it's going to fuse African American mythology in there. And then you're also going to learn a little bit more about the Isis character and her role in the African American culture. And I'm trying to, show that there were heroes, African American heroes in the Golden Age, but they weren't wearing spandex capes and tights. They were usually doing other things because our struggles were completely different, than your white people, and our heroes had to deal with different experiences than their experiences. From what I've seen in the Golden Age, it really wasn't when it came down to African American characters. Most of what we got were minstrels, and I really wanted to humanize the characters and show the humanity of black people in this story. Because after reading, about the wizard's sidekick who was a minstrel, Whitewash was on the Young Allies, he was a minstrel. When it came down to African American characters, we really didn't have much going on. I remember reading an issue of Shazam, looking at the panel online where Shazam puts on blackface, and I really wanted to, show the human side of black people in this story, and I really wanted to, explore different things like all the black-owned businesses, the black culture, the black arts, all that stuff. I'm going to explore an Isis Imitation of Life, and I'm going to explore, the intra-racism, the light-skin, dark-skin issue, and I'm hoping to put a little bit of fantasy elements in there. But this one will be a bit of a darker tale, and it will be, a bit more on a serious tone, because the issues that I'm putting into the story about race and identity are some that I really think we really need to discuss, and we really need to, you know, people need to read about and get a better understanding of. Um, Again, I'm hoping to have the book out by 2016, and I'm hoping that you guys, you know, get on, join up with the ISIS series and start picking up the books, like ISIS Wrath of the Cyber Goddess and ISIS Night of the Vampires. It's great reading for kids, tweens, teens, and even adults. Fast-paced books again, and I'm urging you to go out and go get them and get started on the ISIS series. It's positive African American fiction, and it's definitely worth your time. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.